Welcome to One on One with Mitch Lafon, and joining me on this episode, it is Bad Company drummer Simon Kirke. We talk about his new album, All Because of You. And if this sounds somewhat familiar, it is because we did this about 4 to 5 weeks ago for a part one. We talked about the album, Bad Company, Free, and all kinds of wonderful, wonderful stuff. And it was so good, we decided to do it again. But this time we dig a little deeper and we look at specific albums in his Free and Bad Company catalog, and we just get into the nitty gritty. And of course, we do talk about the new album, All Because of You. And there you go. Enough of me for now. You want to see more of me, head over to Twitter at Mitch Lafon, MITCHLAFON. And with that, here is the one, the only, drummer extraordinaire from Bad Company, Simon Kirke. We are speaking with Bad Company drummer Simon Kirke, who's got a new solo album called All Because of You. Simon, a pleasure to speak with you again, I should say, in this case.
Thank you, Mitch. Yeah, it's nice to speak with you again.
Yes. So we covered a lot of miles on the last interview, and it's not very often that we get two kicks at the can, but here we are. So let's talk quickly about All Because of You. Last time you told me about how you came about making Feels Like Making Love on the ukulele and stuff.
Yeah.
What else can you sort of tell me about the album and wanting to put it together?
Well, as I said earlier, I went through I was coming to the end of my marriage, and I had a new girlfriend, Maria, and a lot of the songs on All Because of You were written with her in mind. She was the muse for a lot of the songs. And one of the first songs that I wrote, and by the way, I had no idea I was going to be making a CD last year, and I had started putting these songs down around the beginning of 2015. I started writing them, and love being the most fruitful of muses, I wrote several songs quite quickly. The first one was Maria, which I wrote on guitar with a drop D tuning, which guitarists will recognize as being a very simple alteration to the regular tuning of a guitar, and it gives a lovely droning sort of sound. And I wrote Maria very quickly, and I followed that with Lie With You. I wrote that I had a little piano in my apartment down in Miami, and those two songs came very quickly. I was, I don't want to get all highfalutin and, out of the box sort of thing, but there was a certain element of, inspiration, really, where the songs came very quickly. And I might have said earlier that some songs take 20 minutes, some songs take months, and those two came very quickly. In fact, in order to really get into Maria's good books, I recorded Lie With You on a little studio in Miami Beach and sent her the results. And I'd only been communicating with her for a couple of months. And I thought, well, if I can get her this song, maybe, she'll really like me. And it seemed to work because we're getting married later in the year.
And of course, I'm assuming, is that where the title comes from? So it's All Because of You,
yeah.
Maria, I wrote this album? Is that?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And also, in I guess in brackets or in parentheses, there were a couple of people along the way who believed in my ability to write songs. And although most of the title refers to Maria, there's this a slight tip of the hat to the people who encouraged me to write, because growing up with in Free and Bad Company, being the drummer, songwriting has never really come easy to me, and I guess in 45 years I've written maybe maybe 50 songs, which is really, a song a year. And it's not really a question of being very prolific. I like to think that a lot of the songs are pretty good. I guess I'm sort of in the George Harrison school of writing, where he wrote very, very seldom, but the songs that he wrote were really rather good. It's not for me to say if they're good or bad, but I'm very happy with the results. But I'm now, as my star starts to sink a little in the West when it comes to drumming and performing, I'm really getting into songwriting in a major way. And in fact, I'm actually going down next week in February to write with Gary Burr, who's one of the top songwriters in Nashville and a personal friend. But to be included in his company, and I'm meeting other songwriters down there, to be included is a big boost for me, because only a few years ago I didn't really rate my songs as being particularly good. You know, I've got that English trait where I'm very modest, I'm not very pushy, and it's just the way I am. It took other people to say, "Wow, you know, your songs are really pretty good, man," and to be included in the Nashville circle of songwriters is a huge boost for my confidence.
Do you see yourself writing for other artists, or are these songs that you want to bring to hopefully a Bad Company album or maybe a follow-up solo album?
Mm-hmm. Well, there will be. All right, first things first, I would love it if people covered my songs. I would be very honored and very happy if they did. As I said, I've only entered this arena recently, and signing with BMG. They have a roster of artists. They will put my songs out to be listened to and hopefully covered. So yeah, I'll write for anyone if anyone wants to cover my songs, yes, please, I'd love that. As regards a Bad Company album, I don't really know, Mitch, quite honestly. It's that decision rests pretty much with Paul, and I don't think he's particularly keen right now to go into the studio. I am. I love recording, and I think the band sounds as strong as it ever did. Of course, without Mick, that dealt us quite a severe blow last year when Mick Ralph had his stroke. So that really hampered any progress that we might have shown regards going into the studio. So I don't know. A Bad Company studio album is looking a little less likely than it did a few months ago.
Yeah, and even less likely than the last time we spoke. Last time we spoke, we talked about what you did during 9/11 and how you went out to the Red Cross and helped. There's another organization that you work with called Road Recovery, and you're on the board of directors. First of all, if you could explain to the folks listening what exactly that is, and then follow that up with why are you involved? Why do you feel it's important? I mean, I can sort of see why it's important but let the folks know what it is and your involvement in that.
Well, Road Recovery is a small organization in New York City put together by two guys, Gene Bowens, Gene Bowens, Bowens, and Jack Bookbinder. And it helps young people who come to overcome or help with addiction, depression, and all the attendant troubles that youngsters go through nowadays. And it's coming up on 20 years, and the reason it's called Road Recovery is that Gene is an avid cyclist, and when he started the organization, he used to pedal all over the tri-state area to drum up funds and contributions to get the thing started. So he called it Road Recovery. So it helps youngsters, and I've seen kids as young as 15 in the rooms, and people in their 30s, but primarily it helps young kids. I help because, I've had my struggles with substance abuse over the years. I'm not telling out of school. I mean, it's quite well known in interviews that I've given over the years that I had my troubles with substance abuse. I'm a lot older and wiser now, but addiction is always hovering over me. So it helps me to help, youngsters. And I, being a father and now a grandfather, of course, if I can help youngsters avoid the pitfalls that I went through, then that's fantastic. I wish that I had known an organization like that when I was in my late teens or early 20s. So it helps me to help them.
Yeah, and there's also they're running a hashtag that folks can check out, which is "Don't Give Up." And maybe you can explain that. But I see that Slash is involved, Peter Frampton's involved.
Peter Frampton, yeah. We had Kirk Hammett from Metallica. We had and Duran Duran.
John and Roger Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Frank Bello of Anthrax. There's just a lot of people involved in this. So what is Don't Give Up?
Don't give up is literally what it says.
Right.
It says, that you're not alone. Don't give up, because peer pressure, especially at that young age, that formative age, is so strong to have a joint, have a drink, have a pill. We all know that opioid or opiate abuse is sky high, particularly in the Northeast, which encompasses our state all the way up to Canada and over to Ohio. I mean, it's for some reason the Northeast is just rampant with opiate abuse. Don't give up. Pick up a phone and call us, or call any helpline. I mean, one thing about addiction nowadays in the 21st century, it doesn't carry the stigma that it carried 30 or 40 years ago. If you're an addict, it's one thing. If you're an addict in recovery, then, it's a marvelous thing that you've reached out. So I don't know who came up with the hashtag last year, but don't give up. And it's pretty simple. Just pick up the phone or go online and reach out, and we'll be there to help.
Yeah, and it's great to see all these artists from all these different genres and age groups pitching in for the kids, because that's inspiring.
Well, we do. We carry a responsibility, whether we like it or not. I looked up to people when I was growing up, and we do now. We're in that position. Peter and myself and John and Roger. We're all in our 50s and 60s, and kids look up to us. And who knows? Maybe we or I, speaking for myself, maybe I inadvertently contributed to kids, picking up. I don't know. I have to think about that, because when I was rampant in my 20s and 30s, although I never crowed about drinking and drugging, it's not the sort of thing that we do. We crow about being sober because we're proud of it, but we don't crow about, our crazy days. I talk about my crazy days with an element of regret, but that's just part of the rock and roll lifestyle. Luckily, I came out the other side. But it's not for me to say if the people that we just mentioned are in the program or not. Quite honestly, I don't know. But the fact that they're willing to donate their time and energy to help kids who are in trouble, it's a marvelous thing, and it helps me keep my addiction in check.
Yeah, it really is a marvelous thing, and it's just nice to see an artist like yourself that doesn't have all kinds of, look at me, I'm the guy in bad. Just a normal human being with human decency helping out. It's just nice to see that we haven't lost all hope yet. So yeah, because you look at some of the young rappers today and you see some of their speeches, and I'm gonna bang bang this and money bling, and you go, really that's the best you've got, really? So
Yeah, I know. Well, look, it's just youth, and it's just newfound wealth and fame, and it will go to our heads. It's just a natural reaction. It'll go to some guys' heads deeper than others. There are some assholes out there. There's some great guys out there. The new up-and-comers, they'll learn. It's just a natural cycle that they have to go through. Hopefully with the right guidance, with the right lawyer, with the right manager, they won't lose it all, or they won't put it up their nose or stick it down their throat. And that's where people like myself, who've been through the mill, we can say, hey, listen, you're going to get $1 million advance. That's great. But listen, you're going to give half of that to the government. You're going to give another 10% to your manager. You're going to do this and that. You're going to be left with about 150 grand net. So don't go crazy, If I'd have had that sort of advice 40 years ago, my God, things would have been a lot different. But, there's a lot more knowledge. There's a lot more awareness about the pitfalls of this business than there ever was. So there's really no excuse now.
No, I agree. Speaking about 40 years ago, last time we didn't get the chance to really talk about all the different albums, but I do want to go back.
Go ahead, I've got plenty of time.
Yeah, I want to go back to the first one, Bad Company, released in 1974. One of the remarkable things is that it went to #1 on the Billboard charts. Talk to me a little bit about going into that, because it was sort of called a super group, and what were some of the pressures, and were you surprised that it went up to #1?
Wow. Well, first things first, yes, we were given that supergroup tag.
Right.
We were in the era of Crosby, Stills and Nash, Blind Faith. Back a few years before that, bands were breaking up and reforming from other bands, and I guess it was easy for record companies and their publicity departments to say, hey, we've got a supergroup here, because it gets you press. Coupled with the fact that we were the first band on Led Zeppelin's label, to be associated with Led Zeppelin in the early 70s was a huge leg up. So, we were saddled with the supergroup tag, didn't like it, but there's nothing we could do about it. All that we could do, and what we had going for us, Mitch, was that we had been around. Me and Paul Rodgers came from Free, Mick came from Motley Crue, Paul Bosborough came from King Crimson, and those three bands were well known, were very well loved, particularly in England, and we were sort of seasoned veterans of 3 or 4 years. So we could. It wasn't that we were saddled with a title that we couldn't really live up to. I mean, we were a little nervous because, what do they say? Be careful what you wish for. And we did. We wanted to be a big band. We wanted to have a good manager. You could check both those boxes. We got what we wished for, but we could follow it up. Were we surprised about #1 album? Oh, my Lord. Well, look, I'll tell you a quick story. In the days before the internet and cell phones, we really had no idea about the progress of Bad Co. The first album is called Bad Co. How it was doing. And we were just intent on traveling the country, supporting people like Edgar Winter, opening the show for various groups all over the country. And when we got to Boston on the last date it was around about a 3-month tour, we really had no idea where the album was. And I remember Peter Grant, our manager, he flew out and he met us at the venue in Boston. And it was great to see him. He was such a boost for our morale, and just the fact that he would come out and be with us on the last gig. So we were all in the dressing room, and he said, "Oh, God, boys, before you go out, I've got something to show you." And so he sort of went out into the room next door to the dressing room, and we followed him. And there, on a table, was a big sheet. and he gave us a little pep talk. And just then, they put the lights down, summoning us to the stage. And, of course, the place went nuts. You could hear the roar. And we were going, fucking hell, Peter, come on, we got to go. He said, all right, they'll wait. They'll wait. I want to thank you for all the hard work. And he whipped back this sheet, and there were 4 gold albums. And he said, I believe this week you're number 1, boys, so congratulations. And he gave us all a hug. And we just floated out onto that stage and gave one of the performances of our lives. We were number 1. It was the most amazing feeling.
Was the band, when you started it and went to make that first album, was it with the plan that we're going to do this for the next 10 years, or was it the plan we're going to do 10 songs and then go home and back to free, and like sort of what was the game plan?
No, there was no real plan like that. And it's funny, it's not very often I get questions like that, but we were all in our early 20s, and I think I was trying to shake off the ghosts of free, which had been, the last couple of years have been a real albatross around my neck in particular, with Paul Kossoff and the drugs and the breakups and the reformations, and oh God, we just wanted to get on with playing music, traveling the world, and there was not a game plan as such. I knew that once we hooked up with Peter Grant and Led Zeppelin Swan Song, we had a few good years in front of us. But we never sat down and said, in 3 years we'll do this, and in 5 years we'll be here. No, we just really followed our noses for, from one album to the next.
Did it, going to number 1, though, affect any... Let's say the album had not even been in the top 200, had just sort of happened and disappeared. Do you think it would have changed the course of things, or you still would have gone, all right, we're still going to do Straight Shooter, we're still going to... did this immediate success sort of go, oh, okay?
Well, I tell you this, Mitch, that we found a newfound freedom, if you want, within the confines of Bad Company. Paul Rodgers and myself had found a kindred spirit in Mick Ralphs. He had left Mott the Hoople because he was fed up with how he's, just fed up with the way the band was progressing. Boz Burrell was in and out of King Crimson before he even realized it, because they had a bit of a revolving door of musicians. It wasn't a group that really hung around for long without changing musicians. So, but we found 4 kindred spirits in the music that we all wanted to play. So, had the first album sunk without a trace, I don't think that would have been the end of the band. I think we would have gone, well, screw that, we'll make another one, and maybe this one will work. And as it turned out, Straight Shooter was a wonderful album. There were some great songs. It's my favorite of all the albums, quite honestly.
In fact, that's what I was going to ask you, because it's got some of the biggest hits, right? My personal favorite song has always been Shooting Star, and there it is.
Yeah.
Feel Like Making Love. You just covered it on All Because of You. Obviously, it's got... when did this one come out? It came out in 75, so you're looking at 42 years of legs. That's pretty impressive for a song that 42 years later you're still reveling in it and covering it, and it is one of the greatest albums, right? It's...
Yeah, well, I think so. And I think also the thing that differentiates it from the first album was that the first album was the combination of a perfect storm. You had you had musicians from 3 well-known bands, supergroup, if you will, coupled with Led Zeppelin, Swan Song, etc. It couldn't really not fail. But Straight Shooter, was Bad Company after 1 year. Could we duplicate the success of that first album on our own merit? And the answer was a resounding yes, we could, and we did. And you had those 2 songs that you mentioned, Feel Like Making Love, Shooting Star, Good Loving Gone Bad. You had my song, Weep No More, It was just a well-rounded, we have arrived sort of album, and it's as I said, I think my favorite album of all of the Bad Company albums.
Yeah, it just really stands up. There's no sophomore jinx on it. It's just a very cohesive. With the success of the first two albums, obviously the band grows and you're on your way.
Mm.
What was the sort of the feeling in terms of, were you just simply elated that now you left Free and you made, because I'm sure everybody, when you left Free, they were going to say, well, you're going to fail. It's not going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have another All Right Now. And yet you did it. And I think you might have even done it bigger.
I think we did do it bigger because we're still around. Free was only around for 5 years. And 2 of those years were very tortuous. The golden days, halcyon days of Free were no more than 24 months at best. And a quick sidebar, the Beatles, they were only around for 8 years. And they only really hit their stride in 1965 to 1966 in terms of recording. If you want to look at the Beatles in terms of recording and touring, maybe 3-4 years at a stretch. That was it for them. But look what they achieved. So, Free, we had 2 very, very good years. So there was really no comparison with Bad Company for in my mind, that when Bad Company hit its stride in 1975, we were off and running, and I thought that we were going to be around for. There was no time frame for me back in those days. Maybe it was the arrogance of youth. I don't know. I never thought, oh God, we're going to be here for 4 or 5 years. There was no time frame for me. We just played it literally by ear. And as the years rolled by, wow, okay, we're still here. I know you're probably leading up with other questions, so I won't go into that area right now. But
No. Feel free to go with it, because I've got other.
Around 1970, 1977, we started to feel the pace, because we went off at a hell of a pace. We were like greyhounds, sort of let out of those traps, when the hare comes around the circuit. And we were like, 4 lightning bolts. But after about 4 years of amazing pace, 3-month-long tours, 100 cities, and album after album after album, it started to catch up with us. And really by 1978, we were beginning to feel it.
And of course, the band just goes on, but let's see. I do want to go over here for a second to Free with the album Fire and Water.
Yeah.
It has the song All Right Now on it, which is as big of a rock song as you're going to get. I mean, it's easily in the top 20 of all rock songs, probably right up there with Feel Like Making Love. Talk to me a little bit about that album and that song, and why has that song just sort of crossed musical borders and just become so special to everybody?
I know. It kind of defies. Well, first things first. Fire and Water was Free's 3rd album, and a lot of people, particularly over here, think it was our first album. Well, it wasn't. Tons of Sobs was the first, and then Free, the self-titled album, was the second. So when we started recording Fire and Water, we'd been around, I believe, about 18 months. And there was no real expectations other than we were trying to build on our reputation. We weren't trying to write a hit song or write a hit album. Paul Rodgers and Andy Fraser, who were the main songwriters, had compiled a bunch of songs, and they were pretty damn good. But they had this mid-tempo loping beat. It wasn't a particularly danceable beat, and it was something. We prided ourselves on being a progressive blues band. Our music was blues-based, and it was primarily for listening to and, having a pint or having a joint, sitting down and listening to it and la, la, la. But kind of, it didn't lend itself, the songs didn't really lend itself to dancing. We had a few songs, don't get me wrong. I mean, we did blues shuffles and we did a couple of up-tempo songs, but nothing that was really uplifting or joyful. And I remember at the end of one particular show in the north of England, we didn't go down very well, and we had to walk through the crowd from the stage back to our dressing rooms, and the applause had died down before we even left the stage. So it was a very long walk back to the dressing rooms, and I remember as if it was only a couple of months ago, we sort of got into arrive at the dressing room quite despondent, and either Paul or Andy said, we need a song that people can dance to. I don't know what happened, but in the next 10 or 15 minutes, Andy Fraser was bopping around the dressing room, saying, we need something like "All Right Now." It's all right now, baby. And I know there's a difference of opinion as to when and where "All Right Now" was born. But I have never forgotten that moment, nearly 50 years later. And I truly believe that "All Right Now" was born in that dressing room in 1969, I think, spring '69. So anyway, Andy and Paul went and wrote the song. And over the next couple of months, I guess, we rehearsed it. And I knew straight away it was quite special. It was so different from anything that Free had ever done. And I believe it was one of the last tracks that we recorded on Fire and Water. And we did it, I believe it took about 24 takes with stops and full starts and breakdowns in the middle, etc., etc. And if memory serves me, I believe we took the 5th or 6th take. And it went on forever. It was like 5.5 minutes. But it was such a joy to play this particular rhythm, this tempo, that as soon as we finished one take, we said, well, let's do another one. And anyway, I guess 2 or 3 hours into the session, we sat down and we were kind of tired, and we were in the studio in Basing Street in Island Records, and the engineer said, this is a special track. We've got to get Chris Blackwell, who was our manager and the head of the record company, to listen to this. And Chris actually had an apartment in the studio, and he was staying there. This was about 2 in the morning when we said he's got to hear this. And I think Paul Rogers said, well, let's get him out of bed. And he said, well, fuck, we can't do it. But we did. We called him up, and we said, you've got to come to the studio. And it only meant him coming down some stairs, to the studio. You've got to hear this song. So he came in. We played him the full-length track, about 5.5 minutes. And at the end of the final chord, as it died away, he looked at us and he said, it's a hit. And I'll never forget that moment. And we all went, yeah, it's a hit. And then he said, but it's too long. Oh, shit, really? So in those days, to get on Top of the Pops, which was the only BBC pop show,
right?
Well, it has to be under 3 minutes.
Yep.
They will not play anything that was over 3 minutes. Now, this is a 5.5 minute song, so you've got to lose 2.5 minutes. And he said, I think we can do it. And of course, we went, no, you can't take 50% of the song out. He said, let me have a go. And Chris was a very good engineer in his own right. And back in those days, they cut tape with a razor blade and they sellotaped it together. It wasn't like you do now on Pro Tools. So he said, I want you to leave the studio because no one could listen to this tape being mauled and hacked and spliced. He said, I want you to go out, get a cup of coffee, come back in half an hour, and we'll have a rough cut for you. And we did. We came back, and the edit is not very good. You can hear it as plain as day. It's not very good, but it worked, and it was just under 3 minutes. Top of the Pops, we sent a copy to Top of the Pops the next week. They released it. They aired it on their show, and within 2 weeks it was number 4. It never got to number 1. We were beaten by Mungo Jerry in the summertime.
That's kind of funny. But, here we are. It's whatever, 40 some years later. And
Nearly 50 years
nearly
later.
50
and
years
it's still popular.
That's right.
And I think the thing about it, Mitch, is it's happy. It's a happy song. And happiness just transcends generations. It doesn't really matter if it's, it was recorded on tapes. Django Reinhardt was one of the great guitarists of all time. I listen to his stuff now. It's nearly 70 years old.
Yeah.
It's great. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Now, I'll start wrapping up here because we've gone long again. But
okay.
You worked with Andy Johns, who passed away not so long ago. Love Andy. I mean, he just made some great. Yeah, just talk to me a little bit about him and working with him and what made him such a genius in the studio. And then I just want to finish that with Free Live. But let's just start with Andy first. I mean, he really had a knack to get the best out of every band he worked with.
He was, hang on one minute, give me 20 seconds.
At this point, Simon had to step away for a second, but we get right back into it. Here is part 2 with Simon Kirke.
Oh, Andy. Well, the thing about Andy was he had an amazing combination of talent and enthusiasm. He was like a big kid. I mean, he was so enthusiastic. When he liked something and got behind something, he really gave it such a tremendous boost. And I remember particularly the follow-up album after Fire and Water. It was Highway. And it wasn't, we won't go there, but it didn't do well, and we were all a bit disappointed. But because we had to follow up All Right Now, so that was a huge task. But Andy was always so enthusiastic about our songs, about our playing, and he would go, "That's so good, guys, that was so good." Even when we were maybe a little down or despondent that the session wasn't going very well, he was, and I'll never forget him, he was just so positive, and he was a great guy and a great engineer. Yeah.
He really was.
And what was the other question? Sorry.
Well, I'll just finish with this because I was talking to the former manager of Guns N' Roses just before our call, friendly chat, and I said, "Hey, I got to get off the phone. I'm going to talk to Simon Kirke." And he said, "Oh my God, Free Live is one of my favorite albums ever, and please ask him about the version of Mr. Big. It is the..." So just for Alan Niven's own edification and mine, tell me a little bit about Free Live, because it is a great live record, and that Mr. Big version that he's...
Big, yeah. Well, first things first, it was recorded in 2 venues, one in the south of England, one in the north. And Croydon is a suburb of London, South London. We did I believe one show there, and we recorded one show up in Newcastle at the Mayfair Ballroom. And Free was really at its peak during that time. We were really, wherever we went, we sold out. There were lines around the block. It really was an incredible time for the band. And this album captured the essence of the band so well. There was no overdubs. There was nothing. I mean, it was just what was recorded was what you heard, when you put the needle on the vinyl. And Mr. Big was recorded in Newcastle. And the thing about being up in Newcastle in the north of England, Free was a huge band up there. There was something about, Paul was from that area. He was from Middlesbrough. So, he was a local boy, and the northeast of England embraced Free before any other areas in England. So when we went to Newcastle to record there, the response was staggering. In fact, we were worried at one point that we could see the balcony swaying under the weight of the kids jumping up and down. We thought, oh my God, it's going to collapse. And there was about 2,000 kids in this theatre. So it was that whole performance was a little fraught with anxiety. It was one of the first shows where we presented all right now. And in fact, I played different drums on that version than I did on the recorded version. I hadn't quite honed it, to where it would eventually become. But anyway, Mr. Big was recorded, I believe, in Croydon. And Mr. Big, the thing about Mr. Big was, it was really a very, very simple song, written by Paul and Andy Fraser. And the majority of the song was only over two chords, E major to D major and back up to E major. That's all it was. But it's what Andy Fraser did on that bass around those two chords in solo that was just stunning. And I mean, I hear it occasionally. I don't really listen to Free. I don't go out of my way to listen to it. But I heard it recently, and I was just blown away. This kid, and this was, 1970, I think Andy was just 19, maybe 18. But he was a genius. He really was a genius on bass. We all were.
Okay.
I mean, I say that as a bold statement. I can't include myself in that because I was a good drummer. I was still finding my feet. But, Paul Kossoff was an incredible guitar player. Paul Rodgers was an incredible singer. And Andy Fraser was an incredible bass player. And we were all very, very young. And it was just an astounding band. But we flew too close to the sun and we burned out very quickly.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but it gave us Bad Company. So at the same time as being unfortunate, it is exceptionally very fortunate. So,
let me come back to that one, Mitch. Yes, I think I understand that. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Yes. So there you go. The new album, of course, is All Because of You. Another great 40 minutes. Thank you so for the first interview. Thank you for the second interview.
I did enjoy it.
Yeah, it's great, and of course, thank you for all that work you do in the community. That's just very important, and
it is.
Thank you. And,
thank you.
There we go. Bye bye now. Thank you.
Bye bye, Mitch. Thanks
Cheers.
again. Bye.
And there you have it, folks. My second interview with Bad Company drummer Simon Kirke. His new solo album is All Because of You. Please do yourself a favor and check that out. And while you're checking stuff out, yes, you know how this ends. Check me out on Twitter at, that's right, MITCHLAFON, or as I like to say, Mitch Lafon. And with that, I bid you a fond farewell, arrivederci, au revoir, bonsoir, and whatever else you can think of. There you go. Bye for now.